When I was a competitive gymnast, we had a rule about self-talk. If you told yourself, don't bend your knees before a skill, your brain heard two words: bend knees. The word don't is too abstract to process under pressure, and your body goes to the image, not the direction. So instead, we'd say things like lock out or extend your legs. Short, directive phrases focused on what you wanted to have happen, not what you were afraid of. Startup founders often do the exact opposite. After a rejected pitch, they say things like, I'm not cut out for this. After a fight with their co-founder, if we can't fix this, it's over. When growth stalls, they're saying to themselves, everyone else has already figured this out, why can't I? That internal script isn't just making you feel bad, it is measurably degrading your decision-making, your resilience, and your actual performance. Sports science and psychology have both published on how it happens. I've coached dozens of venture-backed founders through this dynamic. Today, I'm gonna show you the pattern, why it fails, the research behind what replaces it, and what to do when you try the replacement and don't believe a single word coming out of your mouth. Are you ready? Let's get into it. So we're gonna start with the pattern of negative self-talk. Let me tell you about a founder that I've worked with, and you tell me if this sounds familiar. They just got out of their 4th investor pass in a row, and they're sitting in a coffee shop afterwards. Then the voice kicks in. You're not cut out for this. If you can't even close a seed round, what are you even doing? Everyone else in the YC batch is already raised except for you. Or how about this one? Founder is 6 months after launch, growth is stalled, their co-founder is frustrated with them, they're 3 months behind on the roadmap, and the internal monologue sounds like, if I don't fix this by next month, it's over. No one's gonna care about us if we fail. I just need to push harder. I'm not good enough. If those scenarios sounded a little too close to home, there's nothing wrong with you. You're normal. Almost every founder I work with is running some version of this negative self-talk in their head. The problem isn't that you're talking to yourself. The problem is what you are saying. And I want to be clear about what's happening here, because this isn't just negative thinking. There are distinct patterns of thought. So one of them is catastrophizing. One rejection becomes, I'm never gonna raise. Globalizing. One quarter becomes, I'm not good enough. Another situation that might lead to disaster instead of building towards something positive. And that last one, threat framing, is going to materially degrade your mentality over time and probably cause the most long-term damage. And a lot of founders aren't even aware that they're doing it. And look, it's not necessarily your fault. A lot of us have been drilled in with the idea that negative self-talk is discipline, that fear is what's going to keep you going, help you push through. I get where that's coming from, but let me show you why it's wrong. There's a framework in psychology called self-determination theory, developed by Richard Ryan and Edward Deci. It draws a clear line between two types of motivation. Approach motivation, you're moving towards something that you want. Avoidance motivation, you're running away from something you fear. You often hear it called push-pull. You're either pushing something away or something is pulling towards you. Both motivations can get you to act. Both can get you to work late and power through hard times, but they produce very different outcomes in the long run. Avoidance motivation narrows your cognition. When you're operating from threat, your brain literally processes fewer options. You get tunnel vision. You default to what feels safe rather than what's strategic because you're getting kind of desperate and you just want a lifeline, something, anything that's gonna work. This is the same psychological mechanism I described at the start of this video with gymnastics. Don't screw up gives your brain nothing to work with, nothing to act on, no target, just fear. And that generally leads to paralysis or mental block or something that is probably even more dangerous. When a founder tells themselves, don't screw up this pitch, it does the exact same thing. Your brain is fixated on failure because that's the only image you gave it. The difference is that gymnasts have coaches who train them out of this by the time they hit the national stage. Founders often run this pattern for a decade before anyone calls them out on it, if ever. And the reality is that it compounds. Worse performance reinforces the punishing narrative. See, I knew I wasn't good enough, which then makes the self-talk harsher, which degrades the next round of decisions, and it's a vicious cycle that just gets worse over time. Now, there's hard data on this beyond the psychology. There's a study by Blanchfield and Marcoro, which tested endurance athletes with trained positive self-talk. Phrases like, I'm feeling strong. This is manageable against a control group. The positive self-talk group lasted significantly longer. Not because they were fitter, they were balanced in their physical capacities, but because they perceived less effort under the same conditions. And this matters because founders are basically endurance athletes. Fundraising is a marathon. Co-founder conflict isn't something that you can resolve in a day or even a month. The long, flat part of the exponential growth curve before things inflect, that takes endurance. And the voice in your head during those stretches determines whether you make good decisions or desperate ones. Okay, so if threat-based self-talk degrades performance, then what are you gonna replace it with? And before you log out of this video, I'm not going to tell you to look in the mirror and just recite affirmations. That's not what this is about. The actual shift I want to tell you about is moving from avoidance framing to values-based framing. Instead of saying, I can't let this fail, you build a talk track anchored towards what's actually true and what you're actually working towards. So let me give you some concrete examples for 3 situations that founders struggle with most. Investor rejections. The avoidance script is, if I don't close this round out, we're dead. The replacement is, VCs reject the vast majority of founders. I just need to get 1 or 2 people to say yes to put a round together. That's not positive thinking, that's just the truth. And it reframes the tasks from surviving this rejection to finding the right match. And if you think this is theoretical, I pitched live on stage at YC Demo Day and at Techstars Demo Day in front of hundreds of investors. Most of them said no, but the ones who said yes is the ones that mattered. Okay, here's another example, co-founder conflict. The threat-based script would be, if we can't fix this, the company is over. The replacement is, we picked each other because we both have incredible ideas and strengths. And pretty much every co-founder partnership runs into conflict once in a while. This is just something we have to work through. All right, and let's talk about a situation where growth is plateauing. The negative self-talk version is, we're falling behind. Everyone else is growing faster than us. The truthful, empowering version is, a lot of the most successful companies of all time had a long period where they were figuring things out. Every customer conversation we have moves us forward and gets us a little bit closer to product market fit. This one's especially relevant because a lot of founders compare themselves to other companies' highlight reels. The reality is, the bumpy, flat part of the curve is where most of the real insights and improvements are built into the company that allows the growth to happen. Notice what I suggested for the positive version of the self-talk. It's not aspirational. It's not, I'm a winner. It's factually grounded observations that redirect your attention from the threat to actually succeeding in the task at hand, which of course is going to lead to the outcomes and the results that you want. Now, here's the part where most self-talk advice falls apart. You write this new empowering self-talk script, you read it, and your brain immediately thinks, that's bullshit. I don't believe any of this. Yeah, it's not that simple, right? Of course it wouldn't be that easy, but you can't stop there. This is the most important thing I'm going to say in this video, so let me just be plain. You do not need to believe in the words or in this entire exercise for it to work. Not at first, at least. Going back to sports psychology, athletes develop mental skills in the exact same way as they develop their physical skills. You don't wait until you believe you can do a backflip to start training for a backflip. You drill the mechanics, you do the reps. The belief comes after the competence, not before. And self-talk works in the same way. The first time you say, I only need a few people to say yes, after another investor rejection, it's gonna feel hollow, it's gonna feel fake. You might even feel like an imposter or fraud just saying it. But say it anyway. Not because it's magically going to make you smarter, better, or more charismatic founder, but because the repetition builds the neural groove. Your brain starts getting familiar with the new script and starts leaning towards it instead of the old one. The feeling follows the practice. Look, you might think of it as acting as if or fake it until you make it, but it's slightly different. You're not pretending to be confident, you are practicing a different response pattern until it becomes your default. Whether it's a three-point shot, a golf swing, or fighting southpaw, athletes have to drill over and over again to build a new habit and make it effective. And that's what we're gonna do here with you. This is mental self-talk training. And here's what makes this compound and build on itself. When your self-talk shifts from threat-based to values-based, your performance under pressure improves even a little bit. Maybe you just go into your next investor meeting a little less stiff, a little less tight. Maybe you handle the next hard conversation with your co-founder without totally blowing your top. That small improvement reinforces the new script that, hey, that actually works. Maybe I can do this. And now you believe it a little bit more, which makes the next rep a little easier and the next performance a little better. That's the virtuous cycle. The better self-talk, the better the performance, the increase in the belief, and the better the self-talk. The reverse is what you've been living in, punishing yourself, which leads to worse performance, and that vicious cycle that we talked about earlier. Imagine a professional sports team that hired a coach that just was always negative with their athletes. Maybe they'd be fired up for a practice or two, but eventually that would just devastate this performance of the team. That coach would get fired. And the same way, we have to fire the critical voice in your head, which is why self-talk is such a powerful intervention point for performance change. So let's put it together in practical steps. 1, write down 3 to 5 phrases that your threat voice uses the most often. Be specific. Don't just say to yourself, I'm negative sometimes. What are the actual sentences that run through your head after a bad meeting or a tough week? Think of it as the story you tell yourself. 2, for each statement, write a factually true replacement that's not aspirational, but defensible. VCs reject most founders a cold hard fact. I'm the best founder since the Collison brothers is not. 3, practice the replacement statements out loud. You can repeat them in your mind, or even better, say them out loud. Practice in the car, practice on your commute, practice in the shower. You are building a new habit, and habits require repetition. 4, do not evaluate whether or not it's working for at least a few weeks. You are building a skill that is not going to produce instant results. No one would expect their bench press or their deadlift to get stronger after a single training session. So don't judge this on a single day's worth of work either. Look, if you take one thing from this video, please make it this. The voice in your head is not reporting the truth. It is playing out a script, and scripts can be, and often are, rewritten. You don't have to feel confident to start changing the way you talk to yourself. You can start before you feel it. I've coached dozens of founders through this exact shift, and the ones that commit to it, who actually do the reps, end up not just performing better, but feeling materially different about the hard parts of building a company. It doesn't change the fundamentals. The fundraising still sucks. Co-founder conversations are still uncomfortable, but the internal experience of going through them does change, and that change impacts everything downstream. Now, there's a related problem that I see almost as often, and it's what happens when your negative self-talk comes out not just at you, but at your co-founder. When the punishing voice isn't just directed inwards, it's directed towards the person sitting across from you. That's a different problem with a different set of tools necessary, and I've got another video exactly on that. So check that out here, and if anything resonated with what we talked about today, then that is the natural next step.